You're listening to Beyond the Measure, Episode 4. Listen as I, a young choir director, and my husband, a young composer, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure.
Hey everybody, this is Christian, and I'm here with
Kara.
And this is Beyond the Measure, episode 4 or 5.
We don't know.
We don't know the order yet, but it'll be one of those two. And so we are very excited because today we have a very, very special guest on our show. We are here with Dr. Dee Romines. He is the choir director at Hardin-Simmons University as of right now. I'm sure he can give you a little bit more information about what all he does here in the community. But how's it going, Dr. Romines?
It's going well. Good to be here.
Good. First of all, just tell us a little bit. You do a lot of stuff in the Abilene area, so just kind of tell us what all you kind of are in charge of and other stuff that you do around town.
Okay.
Get as specific as you want.
Well, besides Hardin-Simmons, I'm the minister of music at First Central Presbyterian, and then the director for Chorus Abilene, the classical chorus, the mixed group, the adult mixed group, and so those are the musical activities. And then I'm still involved with Scouts, although that role is becoming less and less now that my son is out of there, and it's time for somebody else to do that. But my full-time job, the 2 part-time music jobs, and my activities in Scouts kind of keep me pretty busy. So
that's right. And we just, it was kind of a combination of the classical chorus group and then the concert choir at Hardin-Simmons. We recently did a performance of parts 2 and 3 of Messiah. Yep. And that was good.
That was good.
It was good. It's good to get a chance to do that. Good for classical chorus, and good for the students at Hardin-Simmons to get a chance to do most of a major work, and the majority of the students at Hardin-Simmons hadn't sung Messiah before.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
really a great chance for them to sing together with a bigger choir, and the chamber orchestra played really well, and then the 4 soloists were outstanding. So it was good, and I enjoyed working on it, and maybe in a year we'll do more Messiah, but not anytime soon.
Yeah, we need a break.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it was great I had never even sung parts 2 or 3 of Messiah, so it was really good for me to be able to do that.
Yep.
So cool. All right. Well, could you just start by telling us how you came to want to study music, and however young that started, you get as specific as you want, all the way leading up to where you are now.
Well, started, and I mentioned the interview I did with the president the other day. He asked me that question, and so now it's kind of been rehearsed, but or I'm a little more prepared for it.
And
but
he's talking about he recently did an interview with our Hardin-Simmons University, our school president, for this little video thing. So,
well, I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. My twin brother and I, when we were 8 years old, I guess 7, beginning of 2nd grade, our father decided or thought we should be doing something in music. And so he called the school, which is really unusual. He called the school and went, "Is there a band, and can my sons join it?" And they said, "Well, there's a band, but they can't join it until 4th grade." And it's interesting, I think about it all the time, and my brother and I talk about it, that our father did nothing in music, but he'd been in World War II, and I can remember him several times talking about being in the barracks, being overseas, and there were guys that could play guitar or could play harmonica or could play piano or could sing or could play a wind instrument, and he couldn't. He never had that opportunity growing up. So he was determined that we were going to have it whether we wanted to or not. So since no band instruments were available, he had a good friend who had an accordion. You got to think about that, in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so he brought an accordion home and said, "You guys are going to play this, and we've got an accordion teacher." And so that's how it started at the beginning of 2nd grade.
Wow.
And I've got to say it before I forget, my accordion teacher, Tony Musco, what a great guy, really good player, and a gigger in the sense that he had 4 or 5 fate books, with 300 or 400 tunes, and that's besides teaching how he made his living. He went and played gigs all the time, and he knew hundreds and hundreds of tunes from memory. Wow. If he didn't know it from memory, he could look it up. But that's what started it. And then band in 4th grade, started playing trumpet, sang in church choir, sang in school choir, high school choir. Really spent more time in middle school and high school trying to be a trumpet player in undergrad than to be a singer. And singing was kind of just the relaxation part of music, where I didn't worry about it too much. I just went to choir and sang, and then I worried about band an awful lot. And then that changed years later. But grew up singing, and so grateful to grow up in church for a lot of reasons, but music was one of those. Had a great minister of music, Nick Bennett, operatic tenor. That was my first voice teacher. Still have his voice kind of floating around in my head when I sing, and I'll never sound like him, but I'm grateful for that experience. Had a lot of great trumpet teachers and voice teachers, and then I knew in high school, and my brother did too, music, if we were going to college, it was going to be in music, and we were both going to be band directors, and so that got us into college. Now, I don't know if you want to keep going on and
sure.
going on.
Yeah,
and then college was fortunate enough. The University of Tennessee, Knoxville was 10 minutes from my mom's house. And so I was either going to go to the University of Tennessee or wasn't going anywhere. And was really fortunate in the sense that the band program was strong and the choral program was really strong. So went as an undergrad, instrumental music ed major, was in the band, marching band, wind ensemble. But Don Neuen was the choral director, and didn't sing in choir my first semester in college because I thought, well, I need to ease into this and figure it out. But my brother and I auditioned for him second semester, and we got in. And I'm not sure that he needed 2 more baritones, but he took us. And that began, and that's where the transformation, at least, or the change for me, the more interest in choral music kind of started. Even though I got out and was a band director for a long time, or 6 years before I made that switch. Well, not exactly 6, but probably 3 before I made the switch, and then 3 more years later after I'd even gone to grad school. But anyway, Don Neuen had sung with Robert Shaw in the professional choir, the Shaw Chorale, and had been Robert Shaw's assistant director in Atlanta. In fact, Don Neuen is the guy that started the symphony chorus in Atlanta. Shaw was moving from Cleveland to become the director of the orchestra in Atlanta, Georgia, and he hired Don Neuen and said, I need you to go audition a symphony chorus. And they hadn't had a symphony chorus before. And it's going to take a while to get I've started now, I've got to go.
That's all right.
But Mr. Neuen told us he went into Atlanta because he moved from Indiana. He didn't know anybody. So we went to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, took an ad out in the paper, took a couple of radio spots that said, we're going to have auditions for the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra Chorus. Robert Shaw is going to be the conductor on these dates. These are the auditions. Come and audition. And he said he had 200 people audition.
Wow.
And the SATB division was perfect. It was about 50 on a part.
Wow.
And all 200 that auditioned made it.
Oh, wow.
And he said it had to be God's will.
That's crazy, yeah.
And that what they had to do was then prepare Beethoven 9, the finale for that. And he said it worked out great, and that's how the symphony chorus started in Atlanta. He was there for a few years, and then he left Atlanta. Mr. Neuen did. Shaw stayed, came to the University of Tennessee. But that Tennessee connection helped. We were talking about Messiah a few minutes ago. We sang Messiah my senior year with the Atlanta Symphony. We were the chorus, and so Don Neuen prepared us. We did performances in Knoxville, then we went to Atlanta. And that was the first time I'd seen Robert Shaw conduct. And the orchestra played great, and Mr. Shaw was just phenomenal. And Mr. Neuen was great. But Mr. Shaw was, I'd never quite seen anything or heard anything like that before. Yeah. And so even then, as a senior in college, I thought, maybe someday I'll want to do this. couple of years later, I'm a middle school band director in Marietta, Georgia. Open up the Sunday paper before school starts, come audition and be part of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra chorus with Robert Shaw. I thought, why not? Did the audition, got in the symphony chorus, and every Monday night from 7:30 to 10, I got to watch Robert Shaw rehearse and conduct a choir, and then performance weeks, it was every night rehearse a choir and an orchestra. And that's when I realized, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to be Robert Shaw,
Sure.
but the music was the hook.
Yeah.
We were doing such good music. I thought, wow, I've got to figure out a way to do this.
Yeah. And some people, I'm sure a lot of people would say that just being able to sit in on a few rehearsals with Robert Shaw is maybe worth more than who knows how many semesters of schooling.
Yeah.
It was worth a lot, and I'm so grateful for that. Not only how he ran a rehearsal, but how did he walk on stage? How did he bow?
Yeah.
How did he recognize the soloists? Who did he recognize? What was the order in that?
Every little detail.
Because he'd been George Zell's assistant at Cleveland for 11 years, and maybe the best orchestra in the United States, maybe one of the best orchestras in the world. So you get a chance to watch him conduct and rehearse professional musicians, but not an amateur choir, but an amateur in the sense that nobody got paid in the symphony chorus in Atlanta. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. And I remember in those rehearsals, I either looked at him or I looked at the trumpet players or the violinists when we were with the orchestra, like, okay, what can I learn from these people? And I realized I don't know how many more years I've got down here, but I've got to watch this guy and see how he does that.
Yeah. Can I add something there? I mean, there's a lesson there on its own, and I've definitely learned that, and I know, Kara, you've learned this as well, like, you know, going to college as a music major, and I was actually talking to Bill Hardin the other day, and he was talking to an incoming student, but he described it. He said, you know, college gives you the tools to be successful, but it's up to you to use them, and I think we definitely learned that it's ultimately up to you and how much you get out of college.
Sure.
And that's one of the biggest things, is using those kind of opportunities to just sit and watch. I mean, it's
Well, we were talking about it whenever we were rehearsing for Messiah. Like, we were watching you conduct and how precise and everything that you are, and we've not only learned a lot from you in like our college experience, but even now that we're graduated and working with you in other ways,
well, that's kind of you. I appreciate it. I remember watching Mr. Neuen and Mr. Shaw do Messiah, and I would write down, and I still got it in my score from back then. He subdivided the last two measures. He didn't subdivide here. He subdivided it this way this time, and this way another time. Okay, I didn't understand why, but I thought, I've got to make notes on this, because he's doing things that I really don't understand, and I may never understand, but at least I can go back and go, he did this, this, and this, or the whole sheet of standing cues, and we really didn't have it. We had one standing cue when we did Messiah, but where are those, and why did you place them there?
Exactly.
And so it was, you said a minute ago, it was as valuable as, maybe more valuable than any college class that I took.
And I start thinking about, the more I think about, like, for me, I mean, it's easy for me. I still do this to, you know, especially in the choir, and you're singing with an orchestra in that context, they're rehearsing. It's so easy to just, you know, but you know, some people may hear that, especially, you know, students may hear that and think, oh, well, it's just, you know, what am I going to learn from watching someone for an hour?
Yeah.
And maybe that on its own, maybe you get one thing out of it, but it's like, I mean, if you do that multiple times, it's like one person that sits there and watches again and again and again every opportunity that happens, versus over time, like, there's going to be a huge difference there.
There's a payoff. There really is. And I'll be forever grateful that I mean, the first time I saw Don Neuen conduct, I was a freshman in college, and I saw him in a rehearsal and went, this is different. This guy really knows what he wants. If we don't follow, he stops. He doesn't give in an inch. He's thought out way ahead of time what his tempo is going to be, how he's going to give the prep, where he's going to subdivide, where the retard's going to be, and it was really special. So,
cool.
And my college band director was great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Dr. Julian, I learned a lot from him, and so grateful for that experience. But I've probably said it to both of you. I say it all the time. One of these days when I grow up, I'm going to look like Don Neuen when I conduct. I'm going to be that clear and that expressive, and it hasn't happened yet. But there's still hope, right? It could still get better.
Well, and Kara said we've definitely seen. We've seen it. We feel like we've seen it in those echoes of all those years.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But there's the thing: good students make good teachers, right? And so students that are good and do the things they're supposed to do make teachers look better, right? Always.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I appreciate that. Appreciate your help.
So you were singing with Robert Shaw and how long were you doing all that?
I sang total of 3 years. The first year I sang in the big group, the 250 voice group, or 225, depending year to year. The second year, I auditioned for the large group again and was invited to audition for the chamber choir. With the large group, Mr. Shaw's choral administrator and assistant conductors, you auditioned for them. You didn't audition for Mr. Shaw. But for the chamber choir, if you got invited to audition for the 60 voice group, then that next round of auditions was with Robert Shaw. And I can remember walking in on a Sunday afternoon, and there were, I guess, 40 basses in the room, and we just stood in a half circle, and he set up on a platform and had a desk, and he just went down the line and called everybody's name, and we sang excerpts from Messiah. We sang the bass solos. And I was maybe halfway in that circle, 15 or 20 in, and thought, well, there's no chance I'm going to make this because I sound like a little boy. I mean, these are grown men, and I was grown. I was 23 or 24, but I sure didn't sound like them. And we probably all had those moments where I knew I was standing, and I thought, I think my knees are knocking together, and I know the music's shaking. There's no doubt about that. So this is not going to sound very good. But I got in, and the chamber choir was. The large group was really good, and the chamber choir was even better. I mean, one of the things we did that year was Messiah, the whole thing, complete Messiah at Christmas. And the first rehearsal, we read it. Everybody had the marks. He only stopped a handful of times because he didn't have to stop. It was, and I can remember thinking, "Wow, this is a pretty good group," and still thinking, "How did I get in? They must have made a mistake. There must have been a problem there with the auditions."
I think we've all felt that way at some point in some group.
So anyway, the second year I did the chamber choir, and then the third year I was living in Knoxville, Tennessee. Actually, the second year too, but that's a long story. And I was a band director, and on Monday nights I would finish teaching. I'd drive down to Atlanta. I'd get there about 7:15. So it's a 4-hour drive from Knoxville to Atlanta. Get there about 7:15. Rehearsal started at 7:30. It'd end at 10 o'clock. I'd get back in the car, drive home, and get back to Knoxville about 2 o'clock in the morning and get up and teach the next day. And people were going, "Why are you doing that? You got to be crazy." And I went, "No, this is. I mean, I can sleep later." And I was young enough. I could still make that drive and do it. But it was worth the risk and the time. So total, it was 2 years in the large group, 1 year in the small group, and then I went to grad school. And then the break from band started, and I went to grad school at Eastman, and that was a choral conducting degree. And Don Neuen was there, and he had made the mistake when he left the University of Tennessee. He said, "You should come up and see me at Eastman." I went, "Okay." And so a couple of years later, I did, and Eastman was a great experience. Got to directly study with him. I'd only watched him conduct, but I took conducting and the choral lit classes from him, and choral methods courses, and learned so much. And so again, I was lucky to have that chance to go back and study with him. And then I ended up doing band again for a couple more years, but I kept trying to get to choir, and eventually that happened. So.
You turn to the light side.
Yeah, it's right, from the dark or to the dark side.
Right, yeah,
it
it's
is.
all how you look at it.
Right, yeah.
Cool. And then after, you changed to choir, and we can talk a little bit more about just kind of the differences between those two camps in a little while. But kind of where did you go from there as far as working and everything like that?
Well, I had what's the backstory on that. I had done band for about 3 years. Went to grad school, got out of grad school from Eastman, and was applying for jobs. I finished in May. Started applying for jobs, and thank goodness I didn't get any of them. I was applying for college jobs, and it was a time where you could still get a college job with a master's degree, and I applied for a lot. Applied for some high school jobs too, and could not get arrested. I didn't get one nibble, and that started in May, and it was September, and school had started, and I was still unemployed. And a trumpet player friend of mine called me out of the blue and went, "Hey, what are you doing?" I went, "Looking for a job." He goes, "Can you be in Nashville on Monday with a silver cornet?" I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay." So that's how I got the next part of my life, where I toured with a band for a year, Jack Daniel's Silver Cornet Band.
Oh, wow.
But, I look back and God's providence, there it was. I needed a job. I got the brass band job, toured with them for a year. Stopped doing that, got an interim band director job full-time again, still couldn't get a choral job. At that point, my twin brother had moved to Hawaii, and he was a band director at a private school out there. I did a assistant band director job, an interim job for 1 year. The choral position opened in Hawaii. I applied, got it, boom.
Nice.
And then,
Wow.
and then I stayed in Hawaii for 11 years as a high school choir director. So that was it. It took a long time for me to make the complete leap from band to choir. And even then, I'd go to band camp with my brother, and I did trumpet sectionals, and I still played, and so I was still involved a little bit. But that experience at Punahou and Honolulu, great students, a great school. I got to teach with my twin brother for 4 years.
Wow.
Live in Hawaii, can't complain about that.
Yeah, for
Can't
sure.
complain.
Cool. Now, how did you end up at Hardin-Simmons, where you are now?
I was teaching at the University of Georgia, and Dr. Clell Wright, I'd gone to school with Dr. Wright. We were both doctoral students at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. You've heard him say it. I've said it a bunch of times. We were teaching assistants together. We shared an office, set up risers, moved chairs and stands. That's what we were, copied music. That's what we were doing all the time. But he called me and said, "Hey, there's going to be an opening at Hardin-Simmons, and you should apply." And I went, "Oh, no, I'm not moving to Texas." And so
That's what they all say.
That's right. And so that was probably a year before the job opened. And anyway, I applied. They had me come in, and I did the audition, and they offered me the job, and I was as conflicted as I've ever been over anything in my life. Because my family, we just moved into our second house in Georgia. It was a great place for everybody. And University of Georgia was a great place, don't get me wrong. But what I was doing there was not what I'd gone to school to do. It was a straight music ed position. I wasn't teaching conducting. I wasn't conducting ensembles. I was getting to work with grad students, but they were only music education classes. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I'd gotten 2 degrees in conducting, and I wasn't conducting.
Yeah.
So they offered the job. Lawson Hager was the dean at that time, and I remember talking to him on the phone on a Friday afternoon. I had the contract. It was in my back pocket. He needed me to sign it or not. And I said, "Look, I can't decide. I need can you give me until Monday?" And this was a Friday afternoon. He goes, "You think about it over the weekend, and you call me Monday morning, but we want you to come and be part of our faculty." And as soon as he said that, I went, "Oh, no. We're moving to Texas." Because nobody had ever said that to me like that. And so I knew Dr. Wright really well, but Lawson Hager, the dean of the School of Music, said to me, "We really want you to come and be part of our faculty." And that was it. That was the hook. And I knew then we were going to be moving to Texas. So
that's awesome.
I've never regretted it. And you can blame Lawson Hager or Clell Wright for anybody that wishes I stayed in Georgia. But And so that's how I got to Hardin-Simmons, and now 14 years later,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still here. Starts year 15 next year, so
Oh, wow.
it's gone by
Man.
in a heartbeat. Gone by really, really fast.
Well, and then we first met you. I should have said this in the intro, but we first met you at 8 a.m. on the first Monday morning of our freshman year of college in beginning music theory.
Wow.
Those are the days.
Yep. Every day at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes, it was every
5
day.
days a week.
Those were all the days.
And then if you were in chorale, and I can't remember, for a semester?
For a semester, we were in chorale freshman year.
Yeah, and then I think I still sang because we both auditioned for concert choir the next semester, and we both got in. But Dr. Wright had asked me to still sing in chorale with y'all, so I think I stayed that whole year. Oh yeah,
It's kind of like now.
yeah. I still, those of y'all that don't know, I still sing, and I work at Hardin-Simmons, and so I still sing in choir during my lunch break most of the time. So
And I appreciate it. You haven't been paroled yet.
Yeah.
Sentence has been commuted.
Can you talk about like your experience in Hawaii, and like was that like it wasn't your first year teaching, but that was your first year teaching.
First year
choir.
teaching choir full time.
Yeah.
I'd done some community choirs and I'd done some church choirs, but I hadn't done any full time secondary high school level choir, and so I'd had a lot of experience on a lot of instrumental experience, a lot of vocal experience singing, and some choral conducting experience, but not full time every day.
Yeah.
3 different choirs, and so it was great. The school, Punahou Academy, in the high school probably had 1,700, close to 1,800 students.
Wow.
K through 12, it was
big.
over 3,500 students. So the largest private school in the United States and the oldest private school west of the Rockies. It was founded in 1841.
I did not know that. Wow.
So it had been there a long time. I mean, 50 years before Abilene was founded.
Man.
Wow.
The school was founded by Christian missionaries so that their children wouldn't have to make the journey all the way back to New England to go to school.
Yeah.
So it was a great, the school had a strong tradition of, I should back up and say, there's a strong tradition in Hawaii of singing, not necessarily choral singing. Everybody sings, and everybody's walking around playing a ukulele or a guitar and singing. The school had a real strong music program. I said earlier, my brother was the band director. He had over 200 in the band. The orchestra, high school orchestra, had over 100 probably between 120 and 150 string players. There were almost 200 in the choir. And so, almost 600 students out of the 1,600 in high school were in band, choir, or orchestra.
That's awesome.
Man.
And the arts were really important. Program was well funded. I had all the money I could use to buy music. And with choir, you don't need. We already had risers. We had a shell, so you don't. The band and orchestra were well funded as well. So that part of the job was great. Students were really talented. Most of them had come through the school, and there was a K through 6 music program in place, so they had learned to read music. A lot of them had been in band before, orchestra before, played piano. So most of the students, when they came in the choir, could already read.
That's nice.
And so makes a huge difference.
Yeah, everything about. I mean, I'm sure there were still obviously some difficult things about it, but as far as the, what you had available to you, that sounds like a lot of people's dream.
It was a great job. If it had been any place else in the country, it would still been a great job. But it was in Honolulu.
Yeah,
and a great place to live. Obviously, I mean, the beach has an appeal and the weather and everything. But for my brother and I, 2 guys out of East Tennessee, to go and be exposed to that culture was so good for us. And the people, just like anywhere, if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I remember, still have friends out there, still have some students, former students that I stay in touch with, and everything about it was a great experience.
Cool.
I got to be careful if to say that's the best job I ever had. I don't know. I wouldn't say that, but it's dangerous to do that. But it was a really good job, and it was at the perfect place, perfect time in our lives, and I'm so grateful for that, and so amazed that my brother and I ended up out there together at the same time. It's like, we had no idea that was going to happen.
Cool.
But anyway, Hawaii and Punahou School. My brother and I talk about it all the time. We got those jobs. I was 29 when I went out. He was 27 when he went out. I left when I was 40, so I was there 11 years.
Wow.
And I learned how to teach there. I mean, and people might say, well, you still haven't, and I haven't figured it out. I don't mean that I figured it out, but I certainly figured out a lot of things, not everything. I don't mean it like that. And any mistake you could make, I made, right? And I still make them, but I made a bunch out there. And my brother and I talk about this. They probably, whatever that is, 30 years later, neither one of us would have probably been hired because we were young and we didn't have that much experience. But for whatever reason, God's providence, they looked kindly on us, God's favor, and they hired us, and I'm grateful for it.
So that was your first choir directing job, and you had already taught band for how many years?
6
years. So I'm kind of curious about making that switch. Obviously, you had experience singing in choir, which some people don't even get that luxury, but what big differences did you notice, or big, kind of things that you learned quickly about, how much of a difference in dynamic was there going from band to choir and the different types of ensembles?
When I made the switch, I think the most difficult thing for me, it really wasn't the rehearsing or the conducting, although there's some differences there, and we may talk about that. But the biggest difficulty I had was literature, because the literature I'd known would work for the top choir, for the junior senior mixed choir, but it wouldn't work for the freshmen, and it wouldn't work for the middle choir, and there was a gap there. I mean, that kind of literature we didn't talk about at Eastman, and we didn't sing that kind of literature in Atlanta or at the University of Tennessee with Don Neuen. And so I remember struggling to try to find, okay, I've got 85 freshmen in this choir. It's a mixed choir. There's nothing I can do about it. They meet, I can't change it. The guidance counselors have this set. But I've got 60 to 65 girls in that class and 15 or 20 guys. And of those 15 or 20 guys, 5 or 6 of them you might call tenors, but you'd really call altos.
No, I know what you mean.
Their voices, their voices hadn't changed yet. They were still altos in that sense of the word. So what am I going to sing that's going to work?
Yeah.
And that's the thing where I struggled, because I made the mistake and shot out that SATB stuff that was way too hard in registers that they couldn't sing. And I thought, okay, I've got to rewrite this, or I've got to take SAB and retool that, or some part 1, 2, 3 things and make that work. And that was the challenge. And thankfully that got better. And toward the end of my time there, the internet came into being, or access into it. And so you could actually get on there and search around for some things. And that helped, because before that, you got the J.W. Pepper catalog, and you searched through that, or you went and talked to other choir directors and went, hey, what are you doing with have you got a freshman choir? Yeah. Okay, what are you doing? Okay, let me write that down. Let me see some of your programs.
Yeah.
And one of the people that was so kind to me when I first went out there, and I've got to give him credit, Dale Noble was at Kamehameha Schools. And Dale's brother was Weston Noble from Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, who was a legend, like in the choral world. Well, I'd heard of Weston Noble and Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, and Dale, his brother, never mentioned that. You probably heard of my brother, Weston, and I was so unaware. I didn't make the connection. Oh, the last name's Noble, and it's another choir director.
Yeah.
And I'd been there years before somebody went, well, you know who Dale's brother is, don't you? I went, no, it's Weston Noble. I went, wow. Okay. But Dale was so kind to have me. He invited me over to his office and showed me some of his programs and showed me some literature that would work for younger high school choirs. And he was really kind how he introduced that to me.
Yeah.
Because he could have just been insulting and went, look, you really don't know what you're doing with that
Sure.
with that group, do you? And that's the truth. I really didn't know at times, but there were other people as well. But I have to mention Dale Noble. What a good guy, and because of Dale, then years later I met Weston, and it's like, wow, cool. Another choral conducting legend, right? I got to meet and watch him work a little bit.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you were thinking about this, Kara, but it's interesting that you talk about having that struggle with finding the right repertoire.
That's still like such a
and it's
prominent struggle with a lot of
and especially in that context of the voicing, because we were just talking about this past couple weeks, and we're in this choir directors Facebook group, and there've been a lot of people talking recently about how there's just not enough SAB music, because
and the SAB music that there is, and what I've experienced, is like very high. And I only have one true tenor in my high school choir, and he's the only one that can hit those notes, and the others their voices have completely changed, and they're very like baritone basses. They can't sing an E above the staff.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I had a while back, I sent out a survey in one of those groups. It was actually a middle school choir directors group, and I asked them to answer just a couple questions. And one of the questions I had on there, because I'm a composer and I was wanting to get a good idea, and the highest voted type of voicing that they're in need of is SAB.
Sure.
And then I had another question that it was just kind of a broad, what kind of advice could you give to a composer, that's writing for your group and stuff. And there were multiple that said you can write a lower bass part, like a part for true basses at this age. Like they want to sing lower and they can.
Yeah.
So,
They want to use that new voice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah.
So since you've had that experience switching from band to choir, and again, I mean, you had that previous experience, but for any teachers that are out there that they majored in music ed, choral, but then they get into a situation where they're having to teach band all of a sudden, they've never, or vice versa. Yeah. Any advice that you could kind of give them, or any specific things that would be good to focus on starting out in those situations?
Well, the main thing is you got to get help.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to get help. When I first started as a band director, I'd had brass methods, woodwind methods, string methods, percussion methods, and where I went to school at the University of Tennessee, that meant I played violin we were on the quarter system, but I played violin for a quarter, I played cello for a quarter, I played string bass for a quarter, I played bassoon for a quarter, I played flute for a quarter, I minored on clarinet, percussion for a whole quarter, saxophone for a quarter. Okay, that's a lot of experience. And still, when I got at, the first thing I did, my brother and my double first cousin are both saxophonists. Call them and go, okay, you got to help me. What do I do with these saxophones? What do I do with these flutes? Yeah. What do I do with these clarinets? Until you kind of get comfortable. And I still call them, even after I'd been doing well, or call a friend of mine who was a flute player and go, all right, my flutes are having trouble doing this. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So that's the best advice I can give, is get help. Now, and if you were going to switch, if you were a band director and your principal came in and said, hey, we want to start a choir, and you're certified EC through 12, band, choir, and orchestra. Okay, so you're going to start a choir next year. Got to get some help.
If that happened to me, like if I was told that I needed to start a band, I quit.
Well, I think it's possible if you're a band director to make the switch to choir.
Yeah,
But if you've never played a wind instrument,
I played flute for a little bit, so I know
but to go the other way, if you're a choral musician and you never played a wind instrument or a string instrument other than a methods class, and they said, we want you to do band,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the first hurdle is the transposition.
Oh,
Transpositions, right? And I mean, there are band directors that struggle with the transpositions.
Oh,
but
sure.
But if that's going to be the killer.
Gosh.
But, and I've probably said this to you all before, my twin brother we both grew up singing, and he made all-state choir, you know, in high school. I didn't audition, but I should have. But he made it, so I thought, well, if he made it, I probably could have as well. That's not necessarily true. But his principal came to him. He was a high school band director and said, we want to start a choir, and we want you to do it. We already talked a couple of times a day. He was just burning the phone up constantly. Okay, how do I do a warm-up? What does it need to sound like? What tunes should we do? How do I do this? And how do I structure it? And how do I do the auditions? And how to do the voice placement? And he could sing. And he still struggled. But he did the smart thing. He reached out and got help. And so I don't know that there's any book you can read that would answer all those questions. I would say reach out to somebody that you know that you went to school with. Like you guys were friends. There was a core group of people you guys were together when you went through Hardin-Simmons. And it may have been all vocal, but I don't know if there was an instrumental person in there as well. But you go, hey, I got to call them up and go, what do I do with these trumpet players or trombone players?
Yeah.
You got to get help.
For sure.
It's not the arm waving.
Yeah.
It's the conducting is going to take care of
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
It's the literature, and then just what do I say? How do I talk to a trumpet player?
Oh, yeah.
How do I talk? You know,
It's the rehearsing.
yeah.
itself.
How do I talk that makes sense to a percussionist or a violinist? And that's. But it's possible. But it just goes to show you that music. There's a common denominator, but the specifics, the specialties of each one are. I'll tie it back into Robert Shaw when he got the job in Atlanta as the director of orchestral activities, or the orchestral director. He'd been an assistant with George Zell at Cleveland. He'd been the orchestral director at San Diego. He'd had a lot of orchestral experience, but now he was going to be the orchestra guy, not an assistant, the head, the orchestra conductor. And his first rehearsal, he stood up in front of the orchestra in Atlanta and said, "You know more about your instruments than I do, but I know more about the score than you do."
Huh.
And
Ooh,
that
that's
was the trade-off, right? He
Yeah.
knew he would never understand how to play violin like the principal violinist, but he could know the score better than anybody in the room, and so that was a great lesson. Never forgot it. Right, score study.
Yeah. Well, and it also I feel like that would kind of help. That kind of helps that whole teamwork aspect as well, because everyone's on the same page.
Yep.
You know,
Shaw's. He did so many things well, but he did try to build a group of people that we're going to come together and we're going to make this musical experience happen. It's not I'm up on the podium, I'm in charge, I tell you everything to do. It's how can we do this together? How can we collaborate? Some orchestral musicians were unsettled by that he was willing to work, but a lot thought it was refreshing that here's the guy that's the director of the orchestra going, well, how can we do this? What can we do to make this better together as an ensemble?
Wow.
So that's an important lesson, because we can sometimes think as conductors we're a little more important than we are. We all want to be needed and liked, but it's amazing the group can sing or play without you.
And I've seen that happen whenever I'm gone. Like if I have a substitute with my top group, my show choir, I'll leave them like just sing through these songs, and I get a report back from the substitute, and they did what they were supposed to do. They sang great. And there was one time whenever we were at Team EA, I needed them to come up with choreography for one of their songs, and they hunkered down, sent me a video of them doing it, and they can do a lot of things without me.
Yeah, well, and you've helped them. You've run rehearsals and laid the groundwork for them, and now they can start and stop the tunes. Yeah, they really can.
And during UIL season, for sure, we were in the middle of it, and I had one of my students lead through sight reading. Like they knew the notes on the piano, and they went through it and everything.
And that's so important too, because I'm thinking about your story, Kara. One of the big moments that you realized, wow, I really want to, do music for a living was when Miss Antonone she had to go, and she let you kind of personally kind of lead everything.
It was scary.
It was scary, but it
on
was
the spot.
Yeah, for sure. But then you learned that you could do it, and you realize, oh, I kind of like this. So it's cool. It's awesome.
What did band versus choir, like the community aspect? Did you see a difference between like how people interacted with each other or how you interacted with your students?
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. Actually.
It's the same, but it's different. Band, I mean, the bands I grew up in, the bands I was around, I think have as much community as any choir.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe not as visible because, and not saying band is less emotional than choir, but if you're holding an instrument, you've got it up against your mouth.
Yeah.
It's not the same as if your instrument is your speaking voice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard people say that choirs are more social than band. I don't know that that's true. Maybe they're more outgoing in rehearsal because their voice is their instrument. It's hard to separate the two. But I've been a part of bands where there was a real community, and the same thing with choir. How they show it is different. And not that choirs don't rehearse and they are structured when it's at its best. Yeah. I don't remember a whole lot of times in college ever laughing in a band rehearsal.
Yeah.
I remember more times in choir, and we didn't laugh a lot in choir because it was really structured. But even in Atlanta with Mr. Shaw, where it was really orderly and strict as far as what we were going to accomplish in rehearsal, there were still moments where somebody would do something, he'd say something, and it was really, really funny, or it was really emotional because of the music. And I felt that in band, and I felt it in choir. So it's different, and I'm not sure I can put into words how it is different. I've probably shed more tears during choral pieces than band pieces, but that doesn't mean that they weren't.
Sure.
Of course, that they weren't important and that there wasn't an emotion there. It's just and maybe for us in choir, text.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, you have that besides
the connection.
The music, you've got that text that makes a connection
layer.
to, and it's a good thing. But band, choir, orchestra, I think our students now, whatever, middle school, high school, college, after college, there's a real hunger for that. That connection and any performing ensemble and the music, especially if it's good music done at a high level. I think there's a bond there from the people that make that music that, and not just the music making, although that's why we come together, but that sense of, family's an overused word, but but I don't know, but there is a connection.
Yeah.
And they have a connection to you as their teacher because you've shared things with them. They've seen you conduct. They've seen you talk about a piece. They've seen that it means something to you, or you've seen it mean something to them. And there's that,
for sure,
that relationship.
Well, and I was just I'd never really thought about it this way, but I was just thinking kind of like what you were saying. There's a difference between kind of a lot of times there can be the emotional aspect between band and choir. And I just kind of, because you said when your instrument is you, not something else.
Very personal.
Yeah. And I was just kind of picturing in my head too, it's like, you're sitting in the audience and you're listening to a band. There's literally something in between you and the performer. Sure. When that's the instrument. And obviously the instrument is what's making it all great, but something about, hearing, seeing the choir and that's it. They're right there and it's like they're talking to you, right? Yeah. I don't want to come across like I'm saying choir is more superior than,
but it's a different.
Yeah.
I mean, I played in bands where I looked around and you can see, cynical, egotistical trumpet players everybody's almost in tears.
Yeah.
And it happened, and you go, well, where did that come from?
Yeah.
We're playing a Lionel Richie tune at an outdoor concert, and this is not the work. It's not. I mean, I like this tune I'm talking about still,
Sure.
but I looked around at all the guys in the trumpet section. All of a sudden, we're going. You can see they're emotional.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
clicked, and you think, wow,
Man.
how does that happen?
Yeah.
But it happens in choir. Now, choir, we have to be careful that it's emotional before it's good.
Yeah.
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 Because
That's true.
it can head down that path. You can edit this out if you need to. A Robert Shaw story, right?
Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
We're singing Duraflame Requiem, the Sanctus, in rehearsal. And it's a beautiful piece. And Mr. Shaw's rehearsals, you always sang soft. You sang. You didn't get to put the dynamics in until just a couple of weeks before the performance, because the notes and the rhythms, everything had to line up and be perfect. So we're singing this. We actually get to sing text. We're not count singing. We're singing text.
Mm-hmm.
We get about halfway through the Sanctus, and it had gotten louder and louder and louder, and it's now at the dynamic it's supposed to be sung. And looked around the room, and half the choir's crying.
Wow.
I could look across at the sopranos, and they were done. They were trying to sing, but they'd stopped, and they were wiping their eyes.
Wow.
I look up at him. He's in tears.
Aw.
He stops it and goes, well, you need to hear it in the sound before you feel it in your heart.
Oh.
And at the time I thought, oh no, why did you say that? Because this was really beautiful. But he wanted to head that thing off. It can't just be emotion. It has
starting
to,
off.
It has to be, you have to have done the work, and it has to be together and in tune and in tempo and all those things. But I'll never forget it. I mean, it was just one of those moments where,
Man, I think that's huge. I'm in no place to actually say anything, but there have just been times where I feel like, I feel like there are sometimes conductors that it's all about the emotion, which is great.
It's
we
important.
need to have the emotion, but like it's easy to think that, if I'm just being super precise and everything, that's not going to bring out any emotion.
Yeah. Yep.
You should still
Yep.
have that.
Yep.
So
and I'm just, it's the Robert Shaw quotes. Here you go.
Yeah.
Saw him in another rehearsal, and he said, talking about notes and rhythms. Our mission is we have to have the right notes and the right rhythms in tune, in tempo, and then we have the freedom to be expressive. And he said, if the plate is clean, the dove will descend. If your offering is worthy, the Holy Spirit,
wow,
you may have an emotional experience, but only if you did it the right way.
Yeah,
you have to go through the work and not just and it's so easy with choir, you can flip that.
Sure.
And that's not to say that sometimes the emotion will help.
Yeah.
It will help lock in some of those. But if you can't sing the right note and the right rhythm, the emotion's not going to make the right note and the right rhythm.
For sure.
Be clean.
For sure.
But that's also the reminder, and it's so easy to get into I'm on this quest for the right note and right rhythm. We got to get that, and then we've got to get to the expressive elements, because that's the payoff.
It's the building block, the investment. Yeah. That's awesome.
How did your teaching strategies, have you noticed how it's evolved over the years? And
hopefully it's gotten better. I hope, because I was fortunate, I've said it several times already, to watch Don Neuen rehearse and watch Robert Shaw rehearse, and my college band director as well. Really efficient as far as how they paced rehearsals, a lot more singing and playing than talking. But having said that, the work, I feel sorry for the middle school band students I had when I was singing with Robert Shaw on Monday nights, and I'd roll in on Tuesdays, and they'd have to, because the way he rehearsed professionals and the chorus is not the way you can rehearse middle school band students. It's just not. Although I tried that, and but to get back to your question, I think. Well, I was taught early on from Mr. Neuen, and I know exactly why. But when you hear a mistake, stop. Don't go on, stop. Well, and the reason is because if you let them go on and sing past the mistake, then you've just reinforced the mistake.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a balance between that and I'm going to let you sing 32 bars, and then I'm going to go back and in that first measure talk to you about something you did a minute and a half ago that you're not going to remember.
Yeah.
So between those two, between that micro-macro approach or a lot of starting and stopping, I think I've gotten better about letting a group sing more and then go deal with the things that need to be improved or need to be changed. And I should say, and I'm about to make a real generalization, which is dangerous, to say that Mr. Neuen only stopped constantly. That's not true, because he didn't. We ran sections with him as well, and then went back and rehearsed. But it was more stop when you hear a mistake. With Dr. Ely, when I was in grad school in the doctoral degree, he took a more macro approach, like, maybe there's one thing I could say that would influence this whole piece, and I wouldn't and some of that would filter down into it, and I wouldn't have to start and stop as much. So that really changed for me. I actually hear those two voices in my head, and it's a constant balance now. That's like the two voices on my shoulder. Stop, or the other one's going, no, say this at the beginning, and maybe you don't have to stop. And both of them are valid, and both of them are good. And it depends on the group, the situation, the time that you have. And you know from teaching, you read the ensemble and you can stop and you start to talk and they go, it's like, okay, well, maybe I won't stop and talk too much or try to fix too much. This is going to be the big macro rehearsal. Or if I've got your attention, it's maybe the more micro approach where I deal with that. But I'm going to get back to it and say, I think for all of us now, attention spans are shorter.
Yes.
My attention span's shorter. And now for me, the golden rule, every 8 to 10 minutes, if I don't change pieces, I need to at least change approaches. And that I might, review a section we did the day before, hit some things, and then work a new section and then try to put them together. But to just grind it, just doesn't. It doesn't go. And I'm not blaming younger students that their attention span, all of our attention spans have been shortened by the world we live in. And all of us have to deal with the instant gratification. It's the same thing for conductors. I get frustrated. it's not better now? I'm going to have to go back and reteach that? And our students are the same way. So I think, the rehearsal process is or the learning process for rehearsals is ongoing. I don't have it figured out. And there are days when I run a rehearsal and go, okay, that was pretty good. And then there are days where I call my brother and go, I just did the worst choral rehearsal in recorded history. And he'll call and say the same thing to me, right? If it's good, it's okay. But there's so many days where I think, wow, that little voice inside my head said, stop, don't, or do this. And I didn't follow it, and I should have. Okay, so I'll make notes, and I'll do better the next time. But it's long and rambling. But
you're fine.
But in a sense, that's the great thing. No matter what I did today, I have the chance tomorrow that I can make it better. I could do better. I could study more. I could have better pacing. I could be a better human being. I could relate to them instead of just grinding music. What's going on in their lives, and so. And I'll say this and be quiet about rehearsal. When I was concerned about people as human beings when I was 30 years old. But once I had a child at 41 or 42, I was a lot more concerned about the students that I had in class, that somebody would be kind and understanding with them, just like I hope somebody would show compassion to my children. And so it really flipped. Now, I make mistakes, and there are days where I'm not a warm human being, but it definitely changed. And for me, always music has been the vehicle that allows me to connect with other people, and maybe that's the greatest gift of it all, besides just the power of music, but that you get to interact with other human beings and work together toward a common goal.
Well, that kind of reminds me, as far as recording, when we're recording this right now, we recorded Dr. Scher yesterday, and he talked about how when he was a band director, first starting out right out of college, that he was saying that there are some directors that that were like, it's all or nothing. You're either in band or you're not.
Yeah.
And he said that one of the best things that he felt like he was able to do that helped his program grow, in his case, was just meeting the students where they were at with schedules. And that was just one example, but just not being understanding, like what you were saying, and respecting kind of, where what the student's going through with everything else.
Sure. I mean, and it's probably true with band directors more than choir directors, although choir directors it happens too. The tyrant model, and that just doesn't work anymore.
No.
It does not. And I'm not sure it worked real well years ago, but that was the model.
Yeah.
I had great band directors growing up, but they to say they were interested in me always as a human being, maybe not so much. I mean, I'm sure they were good people, but the product was the bottom line.
Yeah.
And however you could get there was okay. And if people got sacrificed on the way, they got sacrificed on the way, and that's I hope. I mean, and I'm as guilty of having done that as anybody that's ever taught. But I hope that's better than it used to be.
I think it is, and I think a lot of teachers, and that's even for just general education, building relationships with your students is probably one of the most important things. Because if you show them that you're interested, then they're going to be interested in what you teach.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's
big. More buy-in.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, is there anything else you want? I mean, you just feel like that's on your mind that you think would be good for any listeners to hear, or young people?
Anybody that hears this, I can say, and I just to make it clear, I've been blessed beyond belief to have grown up, had the experience to have great teachers all throughout my life. Band directors, trumpet teachers, voice teachers, choir directors that took a real interest in me personally, and were kind enough, well, maybe not always kind, but cared enough to demand the best from me and the choir or the band that I was in, and I owe them a debt that can never be repaid. But to anybody that's listening, I'll say this: we live in a time where the arts, even here in Texas, where budgets are cut, the arts aren't as important as maybe as we'd all like for them to be. But I think here in Texas, it's better than in so many other parts of the country, and so we're lucky with that. But anybody that's listening, support music education, support new music. Yeah. You're a composer.
Oh, I agree with that.
And we live in a time, there's so much new music out there that's really good. And that's great. The postmodern, there's so much great music. But we sometimes forget there's music.
Yeah.
There's still great music from the Renaissance, Baroque, classical, Romantic that gets left undone because we're doing the newer things, and we should do it. It's a tough balance now to do both. But so I say that there's a lot of great music out there, but I'll end it with a Robert Shaw quote, and this is years ago when he was talking about music and music education. Music's not the luxury for a few, but it's a necessity for us all.
Oh,
I mean, it feeds our souls, and without kindergarten music teachers, middle school band directors, high school orchestra directors, there are no college groups, there are no community choirs, church choirs, and so anybody that's teaching we owe them a debt of gratitude, because college teaching is so much easier than what you're doing in middle school, high school. I mean, every level has its frustrations, but there are no college jobs without that foundation. And so, wow, I'm rambling now, but just say, if you're looking for a group to play or sing in, find one. There, I bet you there's a church choir that would love to have somebody in it, or community band, or community choir.
Yep,
so if you
they're
did
out
that
there.
in high school or college, and you're out, you go, I don't know if I have time to do that. Go feed your own soul, right? Go create, right? Because if we are made in God's image, and we are, if God created, then we're made to create, right? So create some music.
Wow.
So get out there and be part of a group.
Awesome.
And thank you all for letting me do this.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And for being for having to deal with me for a year at 8 o'clock. 5 days a week.
Honestly, that was probably one of my favorite parts.
Well,
It was a pain getting up at 8 o'clock, but it was looking forward to you. And especially during Christmas time, whenever you'd bring out your accordion.
Yeah.
It didn't happen this year. I was sick, that's why.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I missed
That's
the whole
right.
thing. I didn't even get my Christmas set worked up. So
Oh.
my spring set is pretty weak. So I may just leave it alone until,
I don't know.
until next year.
I think they'd like to hear that. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But
Cool.
anyway, but thanks. I enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
of
appreciate
course.
you having me.
Cool. And then one last thing. Could you tell us just about, if anyone's interested, anyone in this area, just tell us about the choir at Hardin-Simmons and classical chorus and just all the stuff
Sure.
you're involved in, if just the listeners
Yep.
know, and if any of them are interested.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate it. Hardin-Simmons, there's still 2 choirs, a concert choir, which is an audition group, a chorale, which is an open enrollment or non-audition group. Right now, those groups meet. Concert choir meets Monday through Friday at noon. Chorale meets on top of that Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. So if you're a student at Hardin-Simmons and you're listening, come and sing in one of those choirs. There is some money available, not a lot. I just got the non-music major scholarship list to see how much money is out there. There's a little bit. We hope next year we'll get Upbeat,
Yeah.
a cappella
Yay.
group, get that up and going again. And then community, on Monday nights, Chorus Abilene has the adult mixed choir is called Classical Chorus, meets Monday nights from 7 to 9. That's an auditioned ensemble. There are dues to be part of that, but we can figure out the money part. That
Sure.
wouldn't be a deal breaker. And that group, Classical Chorus, along with the youth from Chorus Abilene, we're going to Hawaii.
Woohoo!
in
We're
June.
going.
Yeah.
Are you all going?
We're going.
We are
Yes.
going.
Good.
We are going.
Good. Oh, it'll be great. It'll be great.
Excited.
So that group, we just did Messiah, you mentioned earlier, and does 2 concerts in the fall, 2 concerts in the spring. And then area churches, I'm the minister of music at First Central Presbyterian Church. We meet the choir meets at 7:30 on Wednesday night, 7:30 to 8:30. We sing for the 11 o'clock service on Sundays, and we got plenty of chairs and robes and music if somebody wants to come and sing. And if you can read music, that's great for the church choir. If you can't, that's okay too. Classical chorus, sight reading is a big plus, but if you're only kind of reading as the notes go higher, you sing higher, we can do that too, right?
Sure.
We'll be all right. But
Yeah.
those 3 choirs, I know there's a community band in Abilene.
Yeah, there is. I don't know.
I think it meets on Monday. I think it meets the same time as classical
Okay.
chorus, but I'm not sure.
Who directs that? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know. Dr. Dorothy did that for a while. I'm
Uh-huh.
not sure if Mr. Hardin does that or somebody else does.
I'm sure Mr. Hardin knows. We'll
Have
figure
to
that
ask.
out.
And then, Chorus Abilene has an a cappella group.
That's right.
Woohoo, Backbeat.
And just did a
Backbeat.
concert Friday night.
That's right. We were there.
And so, Chorus Abilene has a children, youth, adult mixed, adult a cappella ensemble. So music is
Yeah.
alive and well in Abilene, Texas.
That's
It
right.
really is.
And we'll put the links to each of those
That'd be
different
great.
groups in our show notes. So if y'all are interested, y'all can go to those websites and learn about it and follow them. I think almost all of those groups have social media pages as well. So we'll have those. You can get to those through the website. And I'll tell you, just from my admissions counselor perspective, if you're a student that wants to do music in college and you want to sing in choir or be a music major, you can reach out to us, and we'd be happy to meet you and talk to you about what we have to offer here at HSU. See if it's a good fit for you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you so much, Dr. Romines, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Romines.
That was awesome.
Yes. Just think going back to our years in college, he was one of the biggest, and still is one of the biggest, inspirations to both of us. And we talked about a little bit about building relationships with students, and Dr. Romines is so good at that.
Yeah.
He poured into us personally as people, and I'll always be thankful for that.
Yeah.
So some of the couple of points, just kind of summarize. We've got what we talked about, is just to be prepared for rehearsal. Like every detail matters. You want to talk?
Oh, yeah. Well, the big thing that I got out of that, well, first of all, he dropped so many wisdom bombs from
one-liners.
Yeah, from his own experience, but also just those things that he was quoting Robert Shaw and everything. Like, oh man, like that was so good. But going to, with this specifically is the one where he said that you can't, like, it's good. I mean, obviously you need to have emotion in a rehearsal and a performance, but it's easier to have that emotion once you've solidified all the technical aspects. Mm-hmm. It's so easy for me when I'm writing music, and I think for all of us, you just want to get right to that emotional part because that is ultimately what it's all about. But you can't truly, you can't truly express that to an audience until you've been able to fully solidify all that other stuff.
Yeah, and that's not saying. While he was talking about that, I went back to a TMEA session. It was like the first day, and Denise Eaton was leading it, and she talked about her whole thing was lesson planning, rehearsal planning, and building in different things into the repertoire, into your warm-ups, mm-hmm. And sight reading. One example was like, get the melodic contour of each line, take out all the notes or take out all the rhythms and repeated notes, and you can use that as sight reading. And I did that with one of my groups, and it was cool.
That's awesome.
But going on to like dynamics and emotion, introducing those dynamics into your warm-up is really helpful, maybe just to kind of prepare them in advance, mm-hmm. And everything like that.
Yeah, and that also reminds me of like, so I'm currently reading a lot of business books and marketing books because I'm working on marketing myself as a composer now that I'm kind of in that phase. But one thing they talk about a lot is in marketing is positioning. And they say how you could have a really, really good product, for example, and yet if you position yourself in a context that product doesn't make any sense, nobody's going to want it. Even if you have something that's going to be really, really helpful for them. If you say, I have a really, really cool revolutionary vacuum cleaner, but you're trying to sell it to, you're in a garden or, it's in the context of something like garden tools or something. It's like, no one needs a vacuum cleaner for their garden, but if you put it in a context where, it makes sense to have that and people understand why it's going to be so useful for them, that's when you're going to do really well. And that kind of reminds me on how with like the dynamics, for instance, is you put the music in a context that is going to then create those emotions from the way you technically execute that. Because he specifically said like something about they got it down to the right dynamic level. And so that created the mm-hmm. right context for that emotional buildup to when they finally got to that big point.
Yeah.
That was when everyone was in tears. But if they had just been, singing full steam ahead, everything that whole time, it wouldn't have been nearly as emotional.
Yeah.
So that was a really good example of that.
The second final point that we really talked about was getting help. Just getting help, period. And that's something that has been really hard for me as a first year teacher. I've struggled with asking for help. I talked about it in the second episode, but I am all alone in a consolidated district, no fine arts director, and I'm the only choir director. And it's also my first year. And so I really don't have a lot of guidance, and having all that isolation, just kind of encourages me to stay in isolation. But now I've been asking for help with people from my mentors that I student taught with, and just people in the surrounding area. And if you're afraid to ask for help because it's a pride thing, just get over it.
It's hard.
Yeah, that was me. I didn't want to let other people know that I was struggling, even though they probably knew I was, because every first year teacher struggles.
Yeah.
And they understand. They're not. If you ask what you think is a stupid question to somebody, it doesn't matter. They're probably willing to help you.
Yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, and I thought that was really good, and how he also talked about, it's really cool that he has both that experience in choir and band and those differences and everything. But so really, really good stuff. But yeah, that's awesome. So thank y'all very much for joining us. We will be back next week on Monday. Episodes upload at midnight, so you have something to listen to starting Monday and just kind of listen to throughout the week as you get going through the week. And one other quick thing, if you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast and you're enjoying the podcast so far, we would really, really appreciate it if you could go and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, as well as leaving us a review. That would help our podcast so much. It'll actually help the podcast grow faster. If we get this featured on Apple Podcasts on one of the main pages, then that could really help us grow quickly, and therefore let us get even better guests sooner. So if you could just head over to Apple Podcasts again, leave us a review, leave us 5-star rating. That would be wonderful. Again, we're getting close to the end of the school year. How many weeks did you say, Kara, for you?
Right now it's 5 weeks, but whenever this episode airs, it'll be 4 weeks. So
4 weeks.
This
1
is
month.
Encouragement for everybody. For all those teachers, we're almost there. It's been a hard year for me as a first year teacher, but I've heard that it's been a hard year, period. For all teachers, for various and different reasons, but we're almost there, and hopefully we can all recharge and come back, and it'll be just slightly better.
Yep, that's right. Okay, well, thank y'all so much for joining us. We will see y'all next week. Bye.